to part 4 of our digital archaeology lecture. Part 4 is how digital archaeology may be used to store data. For the first 3 parts, really, we've been working through dissemination of data. We've been working through how digital techniques can help create new data. And we have been dealing with really those 2 things, so in 3 parts. Now I want to think about how traditional data gets stored, because the creation of new data don't help if you don't have the old traditional data. It's not like all of the basic excavation data get thrown away through these new technologies. Instead, what we have to do is figure out how to get the new data, what's called born digital. So this means that archaeologists are struggling with the question of, do we record our traditional data on stratigraphy, on object finds, on the plans that we make? Do we do them all physically on paper and then put them into a digital solution, thereby allowing us to better search our data and to better warehouse our data? Or do we have them born digital, i.e. do we skip paper forms entirely and work directly through digital solutions to store and warehouse our data? I should note that you probably caught that I did not include a third option. Let's just leave all of our data physical and paper. Most archaeologists don't do that now because it's clear that we need to put things in digital formats in order to allow greater data sharing within the team and allow greater flexibility, and also to preserve the data more effectively. Paper can be really hard to preserve. It sits in my office. I'm the only one who has access to it. And then when I die, which will happen one day, all of that excavation data still needs to be stored somewhere. So I'm going to go to the Roanoke College Library, and I kid you not, because I have thought through this scenario. I'm going to take my physical paper data, which I have, and I'm going to bring it to the Roanoke College Library before I die, but when I retire, and say, will you keep this for me for forever? It's a lot if you think of every archaeologist doing that. Storing digital data is a little bit easier when we think about archiving over the long term. And so most archaeologists are somehow grappling with this issue of, where do I store my excavation data, and how do I use the ability of computers to better index it so I can better search it, so my different types of data can be in better conversation with each other. Now I'm talking conceptually. Let me give you a couple of solid examples to help us think through this problem. And I'm going to give you examples from places I work. So let's start here. Let's start at the site of Elephantine. This is where I was a week and a half ago. This is a site at the very south of Egypt, across from the modern city of Aswan. And it is a settlement site that was inhabited probably around as early as 3100 BC and continues to be inhabited through today. We should think of that occupation as being largely unbroken. The part of the site that we've been excavating has remains from about 3100 up through the Roman era, and has no modern buildings on top of it. You see right here the Swiss house. That is where the Swiss team lives. The Swiss team has really no members of Swiss nationality. They seem to be mostly Germans. There's another conversation we had there. German house where I live when I'm working is over here off the picture, so you can't see her. All right, so that's the site of Elephantine. You can see her from the Nile. This is what the actual this is not where we are excavating on the site, but this gives you a sense of the time depth of the tell. This is tell archaeology, where you have the oldest layers at the bottom and people continually rebuilt out of mud brick on top, on top, on top, until we have really quite modern, i.e. Roman occupation at the very top over these much, much older layers. So archaeology has been done at this site actively by the German Archaeological Institute for the last 50 years. 50 years, the amount of archaeology is boggling. And of course, much of that is not digital. You can't expect stuff that was done 50 years ago to be fully digital yet. It's an ongoing process for many of us. But our work of the project I'm on, which is called the Realities of Life project, has been made digital. But we are not pursuing born digital solutions. Instead, what we're doing is we're pursuing solutions that are paper-based and then get later input into a database. I'm showing you the excavation database for the town. This is not to be shared, obviously, and these are not my data, so I'm not going to zoom us too much through this database. What I do want to highlight is that it allows for the compendium of a lot of different information. Everything that you see here, this is the locus, this is the individual. We would think of it as the individual deposit, a description of the deposit, the date in which it's excavated in European order, day, month, year. It's in house 175, we get a series of dates, and here you get a description. If we go over here, you can see that it's linked, so we can see exactly what sort of objects have been found in that layer. We can see, we can go to the ceramics and learn a little bit more about the ceramics. And we have a good inventory allowing us to search even the finds. This is 43501 HV. And I can search it. So I can go 43501 HV and search to find all of the finds that came out of that unit. You can go up here, you see that there are 64 finds, and I can get a bunch of information on at least what exists as well as where it is. I can usually figure out where it can be found now, so we can go back and do more study of it. This is a database that's built in FileMaker Pro. This is a software that is pretty, I mean, it costs. And it keeps updating, which is obnoxious because some of the earlier FileMaker is not read by the later FileMaker, or some of the later FileMaker can't be read by the earlier FileMaker. It makes those of us joining the project have some challenges. But the nice thing about it is that this can be created fairly easily by a non-specialist. So if you're not a computer scientist, you can still learn this program and write a FileMaker database similar to what you see here. This is all created by the lead archaeologist at the site, Peter Kopp, and he's done a phenomenal job with it. So this stuff starts on paper and then is input into this database where it can be individually searched. So let me show you again. If I go to the features end of it, I've been doing a lot of work with the 47th campaign. So I think there should be an A/Z. Not. There should be a A/A. There we go. And you can see that I can work with this layer. I can figure out if I'm working with ceramics from that layer. As long as I have this number, I can type in that number and find out where it is exactly in the site, what exactly it is, what contexts cover it, what its elevation is, and what other materials come from it. So as somebody working on the site, this is incredibly useful to me. As a non-archaeologist, this is not terribly useful to you, right? This is not the sort of thing that we would publicly disseminate because it doesn't include the sort of information that is helpful to the non-specialist. It really does require that you understand exactly what's going on and be part of the team. I'm showing you another Fieldwork database here. I want to stress databases because we all work in them now. Every archaeologist will work in a database. And these databases are key. If you do not have the data arranged in a database, you cannot export it to other digital formats, and it's harder to do digital analyses. So you need to get all of your data tucked into a database to be accessible, hopefully for later analysis. But these databases that I'm showing you are made just for data storage, for the use of archaeologists. It's sort of in lieu of a paper notebook. This is the program that I use for the Comulhisson Provincialism Project. Comulhisson, let me actually give you a photo because I have those. I don't need to show you any more photos. Elephantine, we've looked at her. There we go. This is Comulhisson. It is a much less romantic site than Elephantine is. It is covered with shrubs and a lot of garbage. It gets a lot of traffic from the people around in the surrounding villages who sort of use it in some ways almost like a traffic circle. It will unite some of the villages. The archaeology is tremendous. And if we look at the archaeology, what we're getting is something more like this. And so this is an excavation of Strange Pork, which is unit D09.1. And you can see that we have a series of walls here that are actually different phases. You have a floor here, and it's in this strong rectilinear structure with large bricks that differs from other things that have been found at the site before. But this is how urban archaeology looks. For those of us who are working in settlements and houses in Egypt and the Near East and not tombs, this is sexy archaeology. So let's look at how I'm storing all of that data. This is a database that was created by a computer scientist, by a specialist in computers, and not by an archaeology. As such, it's written in a background program that I do not know. And really, I strongly encourage you to take classes with Dr. Bouchard and Dr. Shende to learn more about databases. If you develop this skill, you will have a job. And you will have a job in archaeology. And if you decide you don't want a job in archaeology, you will have a job anywhere. We need more people with database skills. So this database written in a background that I'm less aware of, but ultimately viewable for us through FileMaker. And what you see is that it's capable of handling many sites. For me, it's handling Como Hissen, as well as a trial site called Playground, where we just practiced and learned how to use software. I'm going to go to Como Hissen. I'm going to look at that D09.1. That's that site or that unit that I just showed you the picture of with the sexy walls and the sexy floor. And you can see it's very similar when I go into it to the Fieldwork database that Elephantine had, where I'm giving you the site's name, the unit, the date of creation, the excavator in charge, which is David S. Anderson. That is the Maya archaeologist, not the other David Anderson. Description, purpose, as well as location. If I go to day plan and narratives, however, what this database allows us for is actually the inclusion of photography directly within the database. It allows us, when we're describing the different types of deposits, I can click on it, describe the deposit, but I can also have my excavators include photographs of that deposit directly within the database. They can include drawings directly within the database. And if I go back, they can include, excuse me, I have to choose a locus for that. Let's choose this one, collected material. Yeah, locus 11 should be good. And they can include, if they wanted to, photographs directly within this as well. Yes, photographs directly within this as well. And so we have a lot of ability to include not just text and not just things that are searchable, but also description and objects to be able to separate description from interpretation. I'm going to go back over to the unit or to the loci for you. Remember, a locus is a single deposit. And here you can see that I'm able to separate the description from the interpretation. Description is just a solid description of what you see. Interpretation is what you think it is. And those are two separate things. And then we can describe the date it was opened, the date we began excavating that locus, the date it was closed, the color, the elevations. We can talk about its relationships to other loci. And you see here that my excavator included an image here. So you can see how locus 10 is related to locus 12 and locus 11. So we can actually see the lay of the land. And that was just a quick scribble of their finger on an iPad screen. We use iPads and do not have any information that is born on paper. All of our data is born digital. So if we were to go here and go to the playground, and let's go to here. Oops. Yes, I do want to cancel the creation of this new unit. Let's go into, oops, excavate that. If I add a new locus, let's say I'm excavating and I come on a new deposit, I literally will add the new locus right here and it auto assigns the number. And I'll go ahead and type description of new locus here. I will include today's date as a date it opened. When I'm finished, I will click this and it will automatically include today's date as the day is closed. It is a wall, or let's go ahead and do this, other, and it is a burial. The color is brown, and you can unsell it as well. And you did a little bit of that in your artifact labs, and we get opening and closing elevations. And immediately I can start including information here from the ingrained webcam on the iPad, as well as being able to scribble things in through, if I want to click this, excuse me, I am going to insert from gallery, and then I can use different images. Why don't I go ahead and use this that I've already taken in my photo gallery, and it immediately includes there. I can also just toggle to the camera. So this is an incredibly powerful program that allows archaeologists to work with the excavated material there immediately at the site. And then, of course, this is a sort of program that we will have accessible to us when we come home to study the material, when we come home to process the material, thus enabling us to understand what we were seeing then when we were in the ground while we are actually doing the analysis later. And that becomes really important because excavations will uncover huge mounds, huge treasure troves of data. And without a digital repository, it's very hard for your specialists in ceramics or animal bones, or you as the archaeologist, to go back and remember what you did 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago, 2 years ago, and to compile that data. But with these digital technologies, the data is warehoused in such a way that's easily accessible to us and that we can look at it more thoroughly. And with that, we come to the end of our storing data section of digital archaeology. And I want to bring us to analyzing data with step